So, ladies and gentlemen, I have a confession. I may have lied to you. There is going to be no Kyle Kemp on the show today. Got a message early this morning from him saying, hey, have a scheduling conflict. Can we try for next week? Which I, of course, replied with, no worries. I understand he's got a roster to build. He's got to get things prepped for the spring game. I understand he has more pressing issues than coming onto my show. So I just appreciate Kyle trying to find time. And yes, we're trying to get him on for next week. And hopefully when we do, it will work out this time, knock on wood. But while there will be no Kyle Kemp on the show today, we're still going to have a lot of fun here on the Media Row podcast, sponsored by Kelly's Little Nipper and Stevens Automotive and Sales. Going to be a little bit of a chaotic show because I had everything planned for Kyle. But what's nice is we like to stay on our toes. We like a little chaos. And a place that also enjoys some chaotic fun is over at Kelly's Little Nipper at 1701 East Grand Avenue in Des Moines. Talk about chaotic fun. You have great food, great drinks, great community, live music. You have trivia nights. They just did May baskets I saw on Thursday. They have breakfast from 9 to 1 o'clock. They have all this great stuff in a tiny area over there at 1701 East Grand Avenue. And what's been great is when I tell people, hey, got a few sponsors, and I mention Kelly's Little Nipper, everyone's eyes bright up. And they're like, oh my God, I love that place. Have you had, and they name either some crazy mixed drink that I haven't had yet that sounds amazing, or they name just one of their many amazing dishes over there at 1701 East Grand Avenue in Des Moines. Make sure to check out Kelly's Little Nipper. Also, make sure to say that keyword Hendo to get yourself some free cheese balls. That's Hendo over there at Kelly's Little Nipper. When you go there and you say Hendo, there you go. I've given you now the keyword 3 times. You better go say it. You can make sure you go and tell them that you heard it here on the Media Row podcast. Chaotic show. Going to have Joe Woodley talking about the spring game, an interview I did with him on the field after the spring game on Thursday night. We'll go through some of the names that you should be aware of with the Drake Bulldogs heading into the 2025 season, as well as we'll talk some Kentucky Derby. You know what? Media Row is going to give you 3 horses that they think is going to win or show. I know nothing about horse racing, so we just went by the names. So that's just enough. That's FYI. And then if we have time, possibly get into just dumb social media questions that is overtaking the world right now. But let's get into the serious topic of the Drake spring game. Yes, football season is already back, folks. And to be honest, being on that field, hearing the, shoulder pads and the helmets collide, you close your eyes and you're just smiling because I love football and that's music to my ears. And so I've been away from Drake football for a year and a half. When I was covering Iowa State, I didn't get to watch as much Drake games. So it felt nice to be back in that stadium and being able to watch a team I enjoy and love, and really excited about this season with a coach like Joe Woodley putting on the headset after his great tenure with Grandview. Before we get to the Drake spring game, I want to tell a story here because I was telling people at the spring game on Thursday night, like Carson Culp and I were chatting for a while, and one of the stories that I love telling people about Drake football, because I've been a fan since I was little, going to games with my family. And one day, my dad picks me up from the Des Moines Elementary School. And he's like, hey, we're going to head over to the football stadium. And they're doing this cool, kids, I don't know. It wasn't a camp because it was just like a special afternoon kind of thing. And I was maybe 9, maybe 10 years old. And so I'm like, sick, sweet, can't wait. So we drive there, gates wide open. So we just walk onto the field and we're like, man, there's really no one here. And I was like, well, maybe it's Drake. Maybe it's just going to take people a little bit. Well, then the players start coming on the field. And so then you're really sitting there scratching your head going, oh, that's kind of weird. Players are coming out when we're the only ones here. Like, what's going on? Then the coach, and I wish I could remember the coach's name, comes over and he grabs my dad and he's like, can I help you, sir? He's like, yeah, we're here for the kids camp or kids day. And he shows him his phone. And the coach goes, oh, yeah, that was last August. And my dad's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. We'll leave, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And the coach was like, no, don't worry about it. You guys are cool. Hang out. And so I was able to be the ball boy for the practice, got to hang out with the players, the coaches. One of my favorite memories of all time. One, just because it's funny that my dad messed up not even the time by oh, that was last week. No, that was last year. That's hilarious to me, and we talk about it all the time. But also just so cool of the Drake players and coaches doing that for an 8-9-year-old kid. So whenever I step on that field, that's the first thought that goes through my head. But like I said, you're hearing the sounds, the fans are getting into it, former players, giving the new players some crap while they're on the field. Just a cool environment. Spring games are always tricky, though. I think it's the hardest thing I've covered as a young journalist because I covered Iowa State last spring in what was the most miserable, coldest day I've ever covered a football game in. But as I'm sitting there watching these games, you can't really evaluate anything. It's just a big practice. So I think it's one of the toughest things to look at. And so that's why our first interview here with Joe Woodley on the Media Row podcast, first question I asked him after the spring game was, what do you look at? What do you evaluate at a spring game? And this was Coach Joe Woodley's answer.
I think, it's first and foremost, we evaluate everything. We grade every practice, we grade every team situation. So, and we've got a rating system. So we kind of know where guys are at, and we do that to give them proof. And, and for us to know, instead of, oh, this guy made a couple good plays, well, how did he do on the other 15 plays? So that's why you grade and you show it to them and you document those things. So, I would say that's kind of where it starts. But, as a whole, just the evaluation for me, and this coaching staff during this time was just, you're really just at this point, yeah, schematics are important, but to me, always the bottom line is, are we building trust? And that's, sometimes people think that's really easy to do. They've had a lot of success with the previous coaching staff, and there's some challenges that come with that when you come in. It helps. Obviously we've had a lot of these coaches have had success where they've been, so you bring a little credibility, and that helps. I would say that was probably the biggest thing that we were trying to do, and it wasn't manufactured, it wasn't phony, it wasn't fake. It's been authentic. We're not, just trying to make stuff up to try and earn their trust. It's just, at the end of the day, it's just treating people the right way, and I firmly believe in that, and I think that reciprocates itself back to us. And yeah, there's times you got to get on them and those kinds of things, but at the end of the day, it's still treating people, how they want to be treated. And I think, and I guess you'd have to ask our players that, but that's always been my philosophy, and it's the same with the coaches that I hire. And and I've gotten feedback. I've met with all the leadership guys individually here recently, and and that's the feel. And I don't think they're just telling me what I want to hear. I think it's pretty authentic, like I said. So I would say that's probably the biggest thing that I wanted to get out of spring was, continue to build that trust, and obviously that will grow over the summertime, and then when we get into fall camp, because when we get to fall and games and all that, man, is that really important to have trust in the guy next to you.
And I think, that's what most coaches do. They grade every little thing these players do. There's so many tiny details that even people that watch this team religiously will miss out on. And so, yeah, as me, the journalist and someone who missed out on this Drake team for over a year and a half, you sit there and you're just trying to get accustomed to who's who, what do they like to do, and just these short little scrimmages. And so I also wanted to talk with Woodley about just what was, these past few months like. It was a really cool opportunity where you get a brand new coaching job, but you don't really have to move your family far, just down the street. So I asked Coach Joe Woodley kind of what these past few months have been like for him and his family, and just why it has become a perfect fit here at Drake already.
It's been, I'd be lying if I said it's been seamless or really smooth. I was at a place a long time, a place that, I was, 17 years at one place. You meet a lot of people, you form a lot of relationships. That's always tough to walk away from, but, I just knew this was such a unique opportunity. Like you said, Justin, I got to stay in my house and take a different job, a new challenge, and, it was just so special, so unique, and working for the people that I'm working for here with Brian. I've known him a long time. That really played into my decision, knowing who I'm going to work for. I truly believe he has my best interests at heart, and that matters in this coaching profession. You've got to have somebody that has your back, and I really believe I have that with Brian, and then of course all the other pieces that that work with Brian, under Brian, whether it be Jay Brummel, Stephanie Sled, whoever, their training staff, everybody, they've just been really supportive, and all those things matter when you're trying to. And again, the nice thing about this is the expectation here is to win with these guys, because they have been the last 2 years, and and that's my expectations. I don't have much patience. I've been a part of a very successful program where we came from, and all these coaches that I hired, same thing. So we want to keep this thing going. I'm not looking at this as a rebuild, and but it started with spring ball, it started with the off season to move to spring ball. Now it goes to summer, and then into fall camp. It's a big kind of puzzle piece, that we just completed, and but it was much needed, and I'm glad we made it through. There was times during spring ball with some of the injuries, and none of them were really long-term ones, just kind of some bumps, bruises, things like that. So I expect for us to be at full strength when we start in the fall. It's going to seem like a whole new football team in the fall, so I'm kind of excited to see that too.
And I'm so excited to just get to know Joe better. He's already been so easy to communicate with. I mean, we text, and I'm really eager to cover this team next year and really get to know him. And I loved Stepsis too. When I was in college, he was so easy to get a hold of as well. And, to be honest, I feel like even though this is a Drake-centered show, I think Stepsis would be more than happy to come on and talk about his trip now to UNI and all of that. So, you know what? To be honest, we may get Todd Stepsis on the show here in the next few weeks or next few months here to get ready for the football season, because Todd Stepsis was great too, and he did great things at Drake, back-to-back PFL championships. But now you have a new era with Joe Woodley, who spent 17 years at Grandview, never lost a regular season game. Again, never lost a regular season game. It's incredible what he's been able to do. The national titles he's won. And so now, when most coaches would be having that pressure of taking over a new roster, and man, last coach won 2 titles back to back. He even told me he's not a patient guy. He wants to win too, which I think fans love that sort of attitude. And with him being an Iowa guy, that just adds even more to why fans are so excited. So I asked Coach again in the final question on the field, what can the Drake Bulldog fans expect from his team come this fall?
Oh, man, that's a good question, Justin. I think they're going to, I think what they can expect is, number one, we're going to come out here and And these guys are going to play hard, and we're going to be physical and a tough and a confident football team. At least those are some of the characteristics I talked about in my first team meeting. What we need to look like, and you can add smart to that. We're not going to beat ourselves, even though tonight there was plenty of opportunities. We did that with some penalties, but those are things we'll get squared away, and those things will certainly be on their radar moving forward. It was so good that this was the first time we had officials, and there was actually repercussions for some of the things. I've been the official for all the other scrimmages and just kind of call the obvious stuff, but obviously a couple things that shouldn't have happened after the whistle, before the whistle. I think we had 6 or 7 penalties total, and 2 of them were aggressive penalties, what I'd call them. And you can live with those, ones that happened during the play, but not the pre or post ones. And those are things we'll clean up, and we'll be in good shape by the time fall hits.
So like I said, I've missed out on the Drake Bulldogs football team. I've watched them. I just didn't get to go to games, wasn't as in-depth and involved with the Bulldogs football squad as I was in years prior because of my job at KASI, where I was covering Iowa State. So most of my time spent on that spring game was kind of going around and asking people just some names that they're excited about, some names that fans should be excited about. And so I'm going to go through some of those names of people you should look out for here, that Joe Woodley is really cooking up something special in the fall for 2025. So first up, the main position and probably one of the bigger ones to fill for the Drake Bulldogs is at the quarterback spot. The quarterback they're rolling with, or at least what it seems like they're going to be rolling with as the day one starter, someone who is taking the first team reps on the spring game, is Blake Ellingson. He's a graduate student, played a little bit of last season, but he is going to have some pressure of following up a quarterback in the name of Luke Bailey, who last season, 16 touchdowns, over 2,600 yards, very athletic quarterback, now transferred. So Ellingson is someone who's accustomed to wearing the Drake uniform, but is still looking for his shot, and now Joe Woodley, it appears, is going to be giving Ellingson the quarterback one position. Now, for the running back position, got a handful of names here. First off is Luke Woodson. Last season, really strong. The senior, 289 yards, 2 touchdowns last season behind, of course, now the graduated Sherwin. So he is going to be looked upon as the main go-to guy. The other running back that is named a running back, but when talking to guys like Carson and Dave, they all mentioned he's more of a wide receiver, is Taj Hughes. Senior, he caught the first touchdown of the spring game, if that means anything to anyone, but led the team with 73 reception yards a year ago, 4 touchdowns, but can be utilized as a running back as well. Just extremely athletic, but it does appear he will be utilized more as the wide receiver. So the running back 2 that I was given, the name is the junior Jake Metzi. Not a lot of numbers to go off of from a year ago, but that's kind of the guy that it seems most people are thinking will be backing up the starter in Luke Woodson. Now you go to the wide receiver room. That's where a lot of changes happen. I mean, my guy Trey Radica is now graduated. That dude was so fun to watch. Big body. Just, it felt like Luke Bailey, if he was ever in trouble, just had to toss it up in his vicinity and he would come down with it. Now those guys are gone. So the wide receiver position, that's kind of the position most of the guys I was talking to were saying that's the question mark. What is Woodley going to do at the wide receiver position? So we mentioned Taj Hughes, the senior. The other guy that was mentioned quite a bit was Sam Johnson, true freshman a year ago, and will be looked upon to kind of take over for guys like Trey Radica. But he's going to be a sophomore this year, has a year under his belt, looking a little bigger, a little stronger. So it'll be interesting to see what happens at that wide receiver room and how Woodley develops it, builds it, and creates it into a really functioning weapon for these Bulldogs. Defense, the defensive line has been incredible for Drake. I mean, in the last 4 years, when Todd Stepsis wasn't even the head coach, when he was just the defensive coordinator, the defensive line was aggressive and strong. Woodley's going to have that same attitude. Sure, is it really tough when you lose an All-American like Finn Claypool, who transferred to Fresno State? Absolutely. And you're not going to have one guy just step into that role and it's going to be fixed. You're going to need a group of guys. But one name that people were saying isn't going to step into that position of Claypool and everything's going to be fine, but has the materials, has the size to really make a move on that defensive line is Tristan Anderson. The senior just has the ability to take over. And again, that's me asking people, hey, who should I be looking for? What did you see last year? And then watching in the spring game, I swear, every time there was a tackle in the backfield, the first number to pop up was 55 and Anderson. So my sources know what they're talking about, and I can't wait to now see how these players grow as well. And again, losing Claypool is the biggest loss from this Drake team. He had 22 total tackles, a sack, All-American. Dude was just an absolute beast. But again, I just like the depth at that defensive line position. And it sounds like a lot of people really excited about Tristan Anderson. Final two names that I'll give you, and then we'll move on from the spring game here at Drake, is the two cornerbacks. First up, Holden Hughes. That's a name most Drake fans know. Holden Hughes, a senior or graduate student. He very first play of the spring game has an unbelievable coverage and block deflection, I should say. And right away, number pops up, and he was the first name I put on my phone. And I was like, oh, there we go. Right on cue. So Holden Hughes, 36 total tackles a year ago, 1 interception, 1 forced fumble. Looks like he's not going to miss a beat. The graduate student is ready to kind of command this defense for the Drake Bulldogs. And then the other corner who made the interception in the spring game, who just really has some incredible speed and not size. He's actually like 5'8", but has incredible speed and athleticism, is Kamani Wilson, the junior. A year ago, 27 total tackles, an interception, looking like he's not going to miss a beat as well either. So the defensive unit that Woodley has right now, again, we don't know much. Spring games, it's just a big practice. You don't really get to see as much action. Woodley was telling me afterwards that the biggest thing he's just worried about is keeping these guys healthy, getting them in game action. He said he wanted 50 snaps. They got to 56 without any injuries, so that's always a win. But the main goal right now in spring isn't really the X's and O's. It's just getting these guys' bodies ready for the summer, and then you move on to the fall, and then that's when all the magic happens. So really excited to cover this team moving forward. We will, as far as I know, be at every home game. We'll be getting interviews with Coach Woodley. I want to try to get him on a weekly segment during the football season, and I know he'll be willing to try to work around his schedule and make it happen here. And that's just the kind of people over there at Drake, and why doing this podcast has been so easy with guys like them. So really appreciate the time after the spring game that Coach Joe Woodley gave us. Appreciate all the help from all the Drake Athletic administration for answering all my questions and really allowing me to annoy them. So can't wait. First game is that final weekend of August. Should be a fun one. They haven't announced the time yet, so I will put it out on Twitter as soon as I see it for you guys. Before we move on to kind of the fun and silly, dumb Friday content here on the Media Row podcast, do want to give a shout out to Stevens Automotive and Sales over at 5320 Northwest Beaver Drive in Johnston. 35 years of family owned and operated. That's incredible. And it just speaks to the kind of people you'll be working with when you go over and see Stevens Automotive and Sales. When I tell people that Stevens is a part of the Media Row team, so many have been like, oh my God, went there once, have never gone to anywhere else ever again. And yes, I'm that person. My family's that person. My mom had a lot growing up. But when I go there, I'm only trusting Stevens. If I have to go to somewhere else, like when you're getting it, accident repair, you can call Stevens and be like, what do you recommend? And they will recommend people for you. They do everything. And I know my buddy Sean Roberts texted me the first day I announced that Stevens Automotive and Sales was a part of the Media Row team. And he said, do they do oil changes? I said, man, they do anything you need. And so oil changes, whether you need a new car, whether you're just trying to get an overlook on your car, they will help you out. That's the kind of people at Stevens Automotive and Sales. 5320 Northwest Beaver Drive in Johnston, 35 years of family owned and operated right there in your backyard, ready to help you whenever you call. Stevens Automotive, 5320 Northwest Beaver Drive in Johnston, Iowa. When you go there, make sure to tell them that Media Row sent you. All right, now let's get into the fun and silly topics to kickstart your weekend and wrap up today's show. Starting with the Kentucky Derby. Yes, the Kentucky Derby is tomorrow, where you can wake up at 6 a.m. and the race doesn't start until 6 p.m. The pre-race shows are so long. And I know there's a bunch of races before the main race, but my goodness, it's exhausting to watch. I like just flipping it over for 5 minutes. I don't know what they're talking about. So yeah, I feel like my eyelids get heavy and I just fall into a slumber if I try to watch those pre-race shows. And again, they're like 12 hours long. But my Kentucky Derby knowledge, it stops at, Seabiscuit, Secretariat, and the Hunter S. Thompson Rolling Stone article, which, and I know I'm getting sidetracked here, if you haven't read the Hunter S. Thompson Kentucky Derby article, it's a must. It's Hunter S. Thompson, so it's all over the place. You never find out who even won the race, but he does such a great job of describing just the gross, rich, like all the people that just go there and wear the big hats. Oh my God, it's amazing. It's crazy. And so go give that a read if you can. And it's one that I always enjoy. But I also like kind of the craziness of Hunter S. Thompson and, going through his daily schedule. He's just, if I ever get into a rabbit hole, I seem to get into a Hunter S. Thompson rabbit hole at least once a year. So that's where my Kentucky Derby knowledge kind of just stops. So we're going to pick the winner for you. Media Row picked out 3 horses that have a good shot of winning the 2025 Kentucky Derby. We did no research. We just basing this off of the name. First up happens to be the favorite. So I know it's kind of a cop-out. 3-1 favorite leading the pack is Journalism. But come on, it fits perfectly for what we're doing here because this is true journalism, picking horses by the name. So 3-1, give us Journalism. My second favorite to win this coming in at 30-1 because it just sounds like the perfect name to be engraved onto whatever Kentucky Derby trophy there is. And it's Chunk of Gold. 30-1, give me Chunk of Gold. That's a strong name right there for a horse. And then close up there, I was going back and forth between these two of who would be second, is Citizen Bull. Coming in at 20-1, Citizen Bull, another one that you can just picture loading up Twitter and being like, yep, that sounds about right. Citizen Bull winning the 2025 Kentucky Derby. So there's our pick from Media Row. Probably just bet everything on those 3, Put them in order, however you want. 1, 2, and 3. Who's going to come? They're going to come in the top 3. because we just know best here at Media Row. So there's our Kentucky Derby preview if you want. I'll probably watch it. My mom has a knee surgery, so she'll be kind of off and at home. So we're going to go over there, give her flowers on Saturday. And you know what? She always loved the Kentucky Derby. We'll stake around and probably watch it with her and probably see one of those three names hoisting up the trophy. So to wrap up the show, though, I didn't really want to do this, but man, it's just captivating the world right now. And it's a really dumb topic, and I apologize that I'm even talking about it. But have you guys seen the 100 men versus one silverback gorilla debate? It's so dumb. It's worse than the, is it black and blue or white and gold dress? It's worse. 100 times worse. Because you have like ESPN talking about it. It's so dumb. A silverback wins 1,000%. And deep tease, I'm going to be on with Ross Peterson on The Rush on Wednesday and Friday of next week, filling in for Trav. I'm going to bring this up to Ross. So this isn't me talking behind his back. I will bring this up to him. But I agree with Ross that the gorilla is going to win. But in his tweet, he said, gorillas kill every day. That's why they would win. Gorillas don't kill every day. They're they eat plants. Have you not seen gorillas in the mist? Come on, Ross Peterson. But that being said, when threatened, I would not want to be one of the 100 dudes standing there facing a silverback gorilla that could just tear me to shreds. And also look at me like I'm getting my ass kicked by a raccoon. So just had to, join in with the major pop culture discussion of could 100 men take down one silverback gorilla? It's a hell no. Silverback wins 1,000%. So hope you enjoyed the show. Like I said, it was going to be chaotic. You're going to get everything today on this Friday. So hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back on Monday where my good buddy Carson Culp will join the show. We may have kind of our videographer week next week of just people that have inspired me, people that have been really good to me and want to hear their stories. Carson has some really cool news to share with us on the show on Sunday. So on Monday. So be sure to check that out. And then a huge thank you to just Ray Roberts once again coming on the show earlier this week. Really appreciate that. Kyle Kemp, this is not going to become a Matt Damon on Jimmy Kimmel thing where we go, sorry, was not able to get Kyle Kemp on the show. We will get him on the show, and hopefully next week you'll hear from Kyle Kemp. And, of course, a huge thank you to our sponsors in Kelly's Little Nipper and Stevens Automotive and Sales. And finishing up, of course, with a huge thank you to you guys, the listeners. Thank you for allowing me to talk about Drake's spring game for 15 minutes. And then thank you for letting me talk about silverback gorillas and horse names to finish the show. I enjoy doing it. I appreciate the comments. Continue to support Media Row. Means the world to me. We will see you guys, though, next on Monday.